Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Andre, and this is the Tennis and Bagels podcast, a podcast about everything tennis from recreational to pro tour. I comment about everything as I've been playing recreationally for a very long time, and I've been watching also for a very long time. I love this sport, it's my passion. And as it is my passion, I also have a favorite athlete. And this favorite athlete does happen to be Novak Djokovic, and this has not really been a very great year for him, honestly. Not in the terms of tennis, but really considering his personal brand, his PR wise, has not been really the greatest thing that he's ever produced in his life. It really saddens me a lot because, yeah, his is my favorite athlete. Has been one of the reasons why I continued to play tennis for a long time and why I got hooked up into watching it. Funny enough that it wasn't Rafa Nadal or it wasn't Roger Federer, because it was in 2007. And back in 2007, Djokovic was in the beginning of his grand career that he has now. Winner of 17 Grand Slams and 30-something Masters 1000s, the first winner of 6 Masters 1000 in the same season, and the only winner to have ever won, the only player to have ever won all Masters 1000s in his career. And not obviously not in the same year. That would be pretty absurd to win all 9, but he did win 6 out of the 9 in a single year, so that's pretty impressive. And in 2007, he was just kind of like appearing and the scene. Hadn't won his first Australian Open yet, which was in 2008, but he just won back in that time the Montreal Open, the Rogers Cup, and he did beat, I think, Andy Roddick, Rafael Nadal, and Roger Federer, who I believe were the top 3 seeds at that tournament. And he's, I think, one of the few players have done so in his career. I don't know if more players have done this, but at least he did it. And pretty impressive feat. And back in the time, Djokovic was kind of like the funny guy, just kind of like the outsider of the big 3, just kind of like not necessarily the big 3 yet, because at that moment we just kind of had Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal, and Djokovic was kind of like coming into his number 3 position, which he came to held for 2 to 3 years. I think 3 years, really, like from 2007, 2008 to 2000 at least 10. He was number 3 behind Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer for a very long time. They just had a very, very strong hold on those number 1 and 2 rankings for a very long time, really. So, and since then things have changed. He's not just the cool Joker guy. That's kind of essentially why we call him the Joker, is because you'd be just kind of like the dude who would make fun of other players, just kind of like making a lot of like impersonations. Very famous videos he had online about him doing Rafa Nadal, Roger Federer, Andy Roddick in a very funny way, and it was really kind of charming, like for audiences to pick up and just kind of have a laugh, like, hey, I like this guy, and kind of that was me. And today it's I won't say there's a different story. It's not like I hate him now. I just am very sad about the things that have happened since then, and obviously especially this year, since he became number 1, really, because this stuff is kind of like essentially just happening right now. He did have his share of controversies, I guess, in his career, in a sense, kind of like because of his diet was something that was kind of like new and made a kind of huge fuss about it, in the sense of like he went gluten-free, I believe plant-based as well. And but yeah, I guess aside from it, I don't necessarily remember all that much. Maybe that kind of the truck that he had to, like the embaric chamber, something like that he would kind of like go in and just kind of like recover, and that's something like mad expensive that only the top players would be able to afford. But I don't know if that ended up being just a rumor, or if that was something that he actually did have. I think that is actually something that he did have, but in a sense, what I actually wanted to be talking about today is, well, today, now, who is Djokovic right now? Who's Novak Djokovic right now? And honestly, why is there so much hate towards him? Like, what is going on that he has managed to screw up his personal, his public image so hard that so many people like really just hate him? Like, I mean, it's so weird to see that. Like, for example, while there's crazy Federer and Nadal fans online who are essentially all the time fighting against each other, saying just kind of like, yeah, Federer is like nowhere near to be the greatest of all time. I just kind of really don't like saying the word GOAT, by the way. But anyway, well, and Nadal fans saying that Federer is really not the GOAT, and Federer fans saying that Nadal is like not nowhere near the GOAT because he's just kind of like a clay court champion, and they just kind of like go at each other's throats every time. But every time Djokovic appears in the conversation, everybody just seems to switch and turn the switch really and just attack at Djokovic at the same time. It's kind of like, no, you don't belong here. Like, get out. Like, this is everybody's against Djokovic at that point. Even he ended up saying that in Wimbledon. Maybe I don't know if it was last year. Maybe it was. He was saying like, well, as the crowd is cheering Roger, Roger, like I just hear Novak, Novak, just kind of like as a way to cheer himself up. Because like he just probably figured out like he's not the favorite essentially nowhere where he goes. And even in the Grand Slam that he dominates right now, which is the Australian Open, he's really not the favorite, and he won't be, especially after this year. He will be the biggest man champion in there for a while, I think. I don't know if Roger Federer can beat that record. I think he's too short of Djokovic's. He has 6, I believe, or is it 7? He's either 6 or 7, and Djokovic has 8. So, but yeah, Australia is kind of like the place where Djokovic will not really be liked. And, well, obviously, I'm not necessarily saying a lot of why Djokovic is hated at this point, because really, who doesn't know? And I've made a video about it, and I've posted it on Tuesday, talking a little bit about the Adria tour and how that kind of like went totally downhill. Just kind of essentially during this pandemic, like Djokovic has done a lot of things that ended up just kind of falling. It's kind of like a bit weird in the media and the internet, really. And the fans, the tennis fans, have just kind of like taken it, just kind of like, wow, really? Is that really who you are? Is that really what you defend? Is that really what you like? And the things that he said is kind of like, first, that was the whole crazy thing with the magic water, as they say. Like Djokovic is kind of like, oh yeah, talking with this guy that is claiming to sell some sort of like blessed water and whatnot that you can drink and that kind of like solves your problems. I didn't even care to watch that because it's so absurd and so ridiculous. And it really was kind of like, it's kind of like a facepalm moment when I was kind of like, hearing that Djokovic was doing that and like giving his platform on Instagram to that guy. It's kind of like, come on, I can't believe this guy believes that. I mean, a high performance athlete should be so in tune with like things that are real and not in terms of science, things that are good for his body, and not that, like, when I listened to that, I was just kind of like, whoa, I was taken aback. It's like, why is this a thing that Novak Djokovic believes in? Why is this a thing that not only a high performance athlete, but a high performance athlete that has achieved so much in his career? How could he believe in such a crazy, weird thing like that? And not to say that just kind of like, oh yeah, just it's just kind of like alternative methods. Not science cannot really explain those type of stuff. Like he literally claimed that both he and the guy he was talking to, that like whatever, that like with good emotions and good prayers, like here water becomes positively affected and it actually changes the molecules in the water. I mean, it's the type of stuff that you just can't really like. I mean, there he said that there were science proven research that did that, and it's kind of like scientific research that did that. That I'm pretty sure without even looking. I didn't look, so it's kind of like it's really lame for me to say that. But I definitely would say that this isn't true. Like, it doesn't make sense chemically, and I mean, it's kind of like sending good thoughts to your thing. Like, believing religiously in a thing for me is one thing. Like, believing is in a spiritual world and that prayers make sense and that prayers work is one thing. But like, to go ahead and say that like your prayers will affect the water as if like it was like some sort of like actual chemical physical reaction and whatnot, that is just that's just not how the world works. And when I say how the world works, not it's just that's really not chemistry and physics have been working since forever. And this is just kind of it's just baffling that this is a thing that happens that he believed, and is really saddening. The other thing that was a statement that he said about the vaccines, that whether if there were a vaccine to be discovered and if that were to be required for players to actually take the vaccine, to be vaccinated against coronavirus, to be able to come back on tour, he said, like, I mean, he said kind of like, quote unquote, I'm paraphrasing right now, that this would be like a choice that he would have to make. That would be something that he didn't really want to do, but if he was forced to, he would, and that was actually required, he would actually really, really think seriously about it and taking the vaccine. And I mean, he kind of like came off as anti-vax for that. He says like, oh yeah, I have my beliefs and whatnot, and I would love for those beliefs not to be like infringed upon. And the vaccines versus belief system, and it's kind of a very rough conversation in a sense. Kind of, it's a very difficult conversation to have, because some people claim that like, oh yeah, it's just kind of because of my religious beliefs and whatnot. I don't actually have seen many people have said that. Most people are saying that just kind of they don't vaccine the kids because they literally say that vaccines are bad and they cause, most commonly the argument that they use is that it causes autism, especially in kids, I think. And aside from the fact that this is pretty much stupid in a sense, like I got vaccinated tons and tons of times, and I'm not autistic, or at least I don't think I am. But the thing is, if it happens, and let's say it does happen, like, I mean, I have met so many people that got vaccinated in life, and none of them, well, the vast majority of people that I've known are not autistic. So, and the vast majority of people that I know have been vaccinated. So if this does happen, even if it is a thing that can happen, it's such an infinitesimal thing that will happen, and it's kind of like, maybe it's not worth like the risk of like having a disease spread across for like a small chance. It's just kind of like going to the doctor, and like, I mean, it's a difficult topic. I'm not really going to go into this because like, I mean, it's kind of like touches into public health and security and whatnot. But maybe just kind of like this, not to come off as just kind of like, oh yeah, like what is one person in the grand scheme of things. Like, I believe that every person is valuable, and if there is a risk of like autism for reals, which I actually don't think exists, I think it's kind of like a case by case situation, and it may be like a problematic maybe in the way that people they manage the vaccine, in the sense kind of like they're administering the vaccine. This could be a thing. Maybe it could be like some sort of reactions in terms of like other medicines that they've been taking. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I do not have a degree in any sort of science, so I can't really speak to that. And I don't think it causes autism, and there's a lot of studies that say it doesn't, that this is ridiculous. So I think I will have to go with that, and with the experience of knowing that, and knowing of the experience of knowing that the vast majority of people do get vaccinated and don't have such a problem. So he did come out as anti-vax, which also is actually not necessarily what he said. He said it was just kind of like a personal belief, and it may be that he is anti-vax in a sense, but it also may be other things. I don't know. And that was the second blow that he took this year in terms of his public image and whatnot. And the third blow, which was by far the biggest and the most, let's say, irresponsible one, because to put up a guy that has like selling like magic water and whatnot on the internet and giving him his platform, that's a thing. That's one thing, because I believe people do have the right to do that. And like, I mean, if they do believe in that, I mean, whatever. What am I going to do? Like, we need to prove him wrong and like whatever, educate people. And people do still get the choice in a sense. But what is actually worse about the Adria tour and things that went on that is because there were so many guidelines and things that he could have followed, and he just kind of, I don't know if he decided not to, or if he thought it wasn't necessary, or like maybe the government of Serbia and the countries that he played at, Croatia, I think, maybe they also thought it was a great idea to hold the tournament in that way, and to not practice any social distancing at all, and not wearing masks, which honestly, given for a tournament of tennis, like if players are on two sides of the court, and they will always be, they don't need to be wearing masks. Like, that's just ridiculous, and it's just not gonna work. But for the other interactions that they have, wearing a mask is just a very, very basic thing and easy to do. It doesn't even cost a lot of money. You're not wearing like a toxic gas mask that you can only find in whatever, like the military or something. You're wearing just kind of like a filter, like a mask with a filter, like a very, very basic filter that you probably can get like for like at most expensive, let's say $10. So I mean, easy enough for a guy who has like millions in his bank account, and for other guys in the tour that also have millions in their bank accounts. So not practicing social distancing, not taking any sort of precautions against it. And he cannot say that he did take any precautions, because he didn't. That is just, the tournament just went on as if nothing was happening in the world, as if no pandemic was happening, as if no COVID-19 was a thing, as if like Serbia and Croatia and the Balkans, I think that's the Balkans, they were completely shielded against all of that. And that's not the case. We all know that Europe has had its share of tough times with the coronavirus pandemic. So it's very naive to say that just kind of like the Balkans would be, we're in a better spot because of whatever reason. And even if there were few cases in Serbia, and they were registering, I believe, 0 cases by the time that was happening, and the deaths were super low. They were like about 200 at the time that the tournament was happening, which was like last week. Even if all those things are true, it doesn't excuse the fact that you can probably take measures to protect yourself against that. And Djokovic is, while not the only person responsible for that, he is definitely one of the most responsible, because the tournament is under kind of like his name in a sense. Like, it's like Novak Djokovic is putting up this tournament. Novak Djokovic is organizing this tournament. Novak Djokovic is like the main focus point of this tournament. So he will take the majority of the questions and the blame, air quotes right now, because he was the kind of like the head of it, like in a sense. Like, so maybe he could have been a little bit more wise in seeing that, and he already did it. And the things that have happened so far, we only know of the players. Let's hope for everything that's good, because as I explained in my video, the crowds were full, like nobody's wearing masks, there was no social distancing, people were just sitting in the stands like it was just a regular tournament. And people were making claims about like, oh yeah, like the president of Serbia was saying like, oh, when can you ever bring this many like big names to Serbia? Like, I mean, it's really not a reason. Like, I mean, it's one in a lifetime opportunity that you shouldn't take because, well, we all know why. At least if it's going to happen in those conditions. So yeah, Novak Djokovic is not to be blamed for everything. Like, is not his fault alone, but he is a major pillar in what happened. And he first refused to take the test in Croatia. He flew back to Serbia without having taken the test, and he was claiming that he wouldn't do it apparently because he didn't have any symptoms. So he didn't feel any symptoms. And at this point of the game, we all know that's ludicrous. That's ridiculous because there are asymptomatic people, and whether it is or not that the virus, it cannot be spread. I'm pretty sure it can be spread if you're asymptomatic. And maybe you're just kind of like suffering a very mild version of the coronavirus that you don't even necessarily know, like in a sense. You could just kind of like be registering as like a minor cold, and you just kind of like forget about it, and it could not be a minor cold. But he just flew back to Serbia, and back there he tested positive. Lo and behold, that's exactly kind of like where I was going to go. Like, he went to Serbia, took the test, and lo and behold, he tested positive. That's what I wanted to say. And that really kind of like sunks him into the whole completely. I don't think he could have been more rock bottom that he is right now in terms of his public image. Like, he if he had tested negative, I don't even know what it would have been. He would have been just kind of like, come on, dude. Like, it would have been bad for him. But let me just kind of like restructure this thought here for a second. If he had tested negative, I actually think this would have been bad for him, not good. I think that as an athlete with that much resources at his hand, at his disposal, testing positive is really far away from the end of the world. But testing positive brings him to think about what he did, and that's great. Testing negative would have maybe have him just kind of like be a little bit more stubborn, and he would probably like be a little bit more defensive about it and whatnot. But obviously that's not what happened, and he tested positive. And now, moving on from that, I've already established that he must take the responsibility for all those acts. Like, he must take the main responsibility and the majority of the blame for that, because he had the power to avoid all of this to happen, but he didn't. But moving on from that, what can like we kind of like take on with us, I guess, like in a sense, like one of them is like for me vital is why people just kind of for them they just kind of, for a lot of people, they just kind of like need the last excuse for them to hate on Novak Djokovic forever and never give him any benefit of the doubt like ever again. Like, they just kind of always hated him for God knows whatever reason. But now they have a reason. They have a very good reason that they will always keep pushing. And Novak Djokovic immediately already published, after his statement of testing positive, he already posted a statement saying that he was sorry and that he realized that now that he was too soon and it was a stupid decision. That's basically, you can summarize that as, I made a mistake. It was stupid. I thought he wasn't, but now I know it was very, very dumb. So that's essentially it and what he said. And it's, I guess, on Twitter is a fantastic place for me. It's a place where lots of people are very friendly. Lots of people have great comments about things, and a lot of discussions can happen. Even with 280 characters, it's very possible to have a solid discussion and presenting your arguments in very concise manners. It's kind of like forces you to do so, by the way. But it's also a place where people just kind of really just spill hate on anybody and everybody just cause. And I guess it's kind of like the rule of the internet in the sense, kind of like if you haven't, if you can be anonymous and you can say anything, nobody's gonna come at you. It's kind of like you can say anything at no risk. Um, they will say those stuff. And there was literally a person with whom I was like kind of like not chatting in a thread, but literally he said, "Oh yeah, it's kind of like Novak Djokovic, because of his person, like the minimum that he could do is like issue an apology and say that he's sorry, but I know that he's not gonna do that because that's against his person." And I tweeted back and said, "He just did. He just released an apology." And then the guy said, "Oh yeah, that was full PR scripted." And that was, and a very funny part of this is the irony that a person that had just tweeted before me replied to that guy, something along the lines of like, whatever he says, you are not going to be happy about it. It doesn't matter what he does, you are not going to be happy about it. It's not going to be enough for you. And lo and behold, as soon as I said he just did, he goes like, yeah, that was all PR scripted, like kind of like saying, kind of like, yeah, he just kind of like didn't really mean it. And that was just kind of like the portrait of a person who will never listen. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter what you say to that person, he will not listen. He will not change his mind on the fact that he hates Novak Djokovic. And it doesn't matter if he issues an apology, and he will still not like the guy, and he will still say that he's wrong and that he's a disgrace for the sport. And all in all, I think this is kind of like the worst attitude I can have towards him. I fully believe that he can become a better person after this. I fully believe that he can actually take the time that he's going to be at home now, and with now the very the very realness of COVID-19 in his body as he tested positive. I am hoping that he will actually now think about all of the people that he brought into those stadiums, all of the people that he's been in contact with, and all of the image that he passed on to the whole public when he hugged others, when he was like playing soccer and like high-fiving and shirtless clubbing and whatnot, kind of like saying almost like either one of the two messages, like, oh yeah, this is fine, you can do whatever you want, just don't worry about anything, or just kind of like really completely disrespectful towards everybody who has been practicing social distancing. And lots of people have been suffering because of that, not only necessarily because of the pandemic, because they kind of like have lost their jobs and people have lost their businesses. It's been a mess. Like this whole thing has been a mess, and just kind of like people just trying to hold up, and he comes and does that. It can be at worst disrespectful. So the whole fiasco couldn't have finished in a worse manner than him testing positive and a bunch of players testing positive. And some say that even maybe throw a question mark. It puts a question mark on top of the US Open, which, by the way, just released a note saying that wheelchair tournament is actually going on. It's taking place in the US Open 2020. Good for them. That's amazing. I fully agree with that. Just doesn't seem to be any reason at all why they wouldn't have a wheelchair tournament. It's kind of like, what, 6-8 players playing? Like, that's ridiculous. So yeah, but back to the point, the tennis could kind of like stop again. Like maybe because some players tested positive, and we've seen that even though they kind of like are not necessarily mingling around the vast majority of the public for obvious reasons, most of them are stars and whatnot, they just kind of they could still be like affected by this. Like it's nobody's kind of just like really 100% safe, and the social distancing measures that we take are even supposed to do that, to like make sure that we minimize all of those risks. They're kind of like mitigating all of that, not fully avoiding all of the issue that we have with problems of infection. But yeah, like I feel like for Djokovic, I just kind of like want to maybe wrap up on that. I don't. I don't think I have much to say that much on that matter. That wasn't really sad, and I'm just kind of stating my opinion at this point. And for makes matter even worse, you can hate me for that. Like for every podcast that I do, I normally come here super prepared, have tons of notes and have tons of bullet point stuff, like segues prepared and whatnot. But for this one, I just kind of like sat down and I just opened the software to record and like plugged my mic in, and that's it. Like this is how I started making this podcast. Maybe that was a mistake. I'm already digressing a lot, but just to kind of like finish my thought on my opinions, this problem of like the whole Novak Djokovic situation, in terms of everything being established in the fact that he is to blame, that he is the most responsible for all of that, that he is that he had the power to stop this from happening in the first place. And even if things were going on in that sense, if he saw that there was too much hugging and too much contact, he could have stopped that. He could have made a rule. He could have imposed a rule that would cause social distancing to be upheld. But he didn't, and he didn't really listen to anybody on media saying that he should have done that in the first place. Because since the beginning of the tournament, people are like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely nuts. People are going to totally be infected. Nobody's infected by the end of this. I'm going to start blessing my water, as Tennis and Grant said in a tweet, which was hilarious. But yeah, it's what I'm most sad about, and my most honest opinion in this whole matter, is that people are just really not open to forgiveness. And I know it's really hard to people that are like in the media that are very famous, because, well, first of all, you don't have any real contact with them. You can only see their public personas. You can only see them outside of their personal lives. And as much as they kind of try to be very candid, like Nick Kyrgios and maybe even Fabio Fognini, I don't know so much of Stan Wawrinka. I feel like he really enjoys the social media personality that he has, and that's probably completely different from what he actually is in person. And it's never going to be the same as if you actually knew that person. If you actually could go inside their closest circle and actually know who they are as people. And that should actually be the reason why we should give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Every one of those people, we should give them the benefit of the doubt. And especially Djokovic, because for no reason, for a long time, people have been hating on him, and it's kind of like doesn't make sense why people just don't like him so much. Like, I've never really understood that, and for a long time I didn't even see that much of that. Just kind of like this year when I started really focusing on being on Twitter a lot more, just to kind of like participate in discussions and get the news faster. That's when I saw a lot of people just hating, and I feel like this is really unhealthy for the sport. And Djokovic really does seems to be a very sincere person in that he wants to do something good, and lots of players even like kind of came into his defense, most notably Gilles Simon, saying that, well, he is doing a lot of things like behind the scenes as well. And maybe that's the problem with Djokovic. Maybe it's the problem that he's trying a lot of things. Maybe he's trying way too much. Maybe he's really sad about his own public image, that he really is trying to make something good happen, and it's just kind of like falling short because he's focusing on way too many things at the same time. And I agree with Murray that he should, if he's the leader of the sport in the sense that he's the leader of the rankings, he should be more responsible. And I think one of the first steps that he can take in terms of responsibility is actually trying to focus more on real things that he can do, and not necessarily like improving his public image, which he might be doing instinctively. He may not even be trying. It may just be something that kind of like is in the back of his mind, and he just kind of like keeps trying to do even without noticing. But he just really just kind of like not internalizing, but like being more introspective and realizing the things that he can actually do and things that he can focus, kind of like one thing at a time, and make sure that he can manage his time with that properly so that he won't make the same mistake again. And one of the things that I feel like it could be great for him is following the example of Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal. Like, because those guys, they're not media people. I mean, Roger Federer and Nadal appear often in the media, but they're just really not trying. Like, for this whole pandemic, they kind of like never really showed up. They did the Instagram live and whatnot like a couple of months ago, and that was it. Like, they just kind of like disappeared. Posted a black square on Twitter and on Instagram with the heart and maybe nothing, and that's it. Like, people criticized them for nothing, and what they did, and it's actually kind of like a funny enough a very, very effective PR strategy that works a lot of the times, is just kind of like, just don't say anything. Just if people start criticizing you, just shut up. Just don't show up. They will start talking about something else later. And maybe that's one of the reasons why Djokovic kind of like maybe have made a mistake, is kind of like really just trying to be in the media all the time. And I think this may be his problem. I feel like he just kind of like could focus on just kind of like doing his own thing and just expanding his resources and focusing his resources on something that he believes in, and just focusing on the player, which he has done. We cannot really deny it. He started the fund for the players. Well, he at least pitched the idea and whatnot, so that people, other players in the top 100 would contribute to other players outside the top 250, I believe. So he's not a person that is just kind of like super self-centered. He's not a self-centered person. He doesn't show to be like a bad person at all, ever. And I feel like it's time for people to realize that. And also it's time for Djokovic to realize that as well, that he doesn't necessarily need to prove anything to anybody. But just kind of like staying low key and just kind of like doing his own thing, and focusing on his foundations and on his maybe academy that he might have. I think he has one. And touring the kids and being there for them when they're growing up, as they're big talents in Serbia and wherever he wants to be a mentor for them. I think that's kind of like going to be perfect for him. Just kind of like really staying low key and making sure that he doesn't go after the media, but lets kind of like the media come to him. And right now the media is coming to him, but that's for all the terrible reasons, because it just kind of like opens the door and they just come in and just kind of like start breaking everything inside his house. But like, if he can just kind of like let them wanting to see things that he's been doing and all of the good things that he's been up to, I think that should be enough for him. And he would not end up being like Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer. And I believe Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer are who they are because of their rivalry. It's not even because of their own accomplishments. I feel like Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer they're basically just one, and now Novak Djokovic is the outsider. He's just like a standalone of himself, and Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer just kind of like have like this mystique and around them. Like, whenever they play a match, it's just kind of like, for some reason, it just draws attention of everyone. And who knows why this happened? Their playing styles is really fun to watch together when they play against each other. And that's maybe one of the reasons. But that just is something about the rivalry that makes it different. And that's something that Djokovic is just never going to have. And maybe it's just kind of like time for him to accept that, in a sense. And start doing his own thing, and really not just trying to push too many things on his agenda, and just let time heal this wound that 2020 has caused to his public image. And I really do hope that people will start looking somewhere else and just kind of like calming down and seeing that Djokovic is a good player. He's a great player. He's a great ambassador for our sport. And although this was a big mistake and we should hold him accountable for it, we should not really just kind of forget about it and just kind of like, oh yeah, that's fine. It's just the past. we should remember the things of the past, but I feel like just kind of like to learn from them and not just to blame him forever. I even read like somebody saying like, I hope something really disgraceful happens to his career and that he can never play tennis again. That was like the worst comment I've ever saw anybody writing about anyone publicly like ever, I think. And there's definitely worse comments that people have written, but that was the worst one that I've read. So yeah. And seriously, yeah, I guess that's really just my opinion about the matter. I feel like people can just calm down, just let their emotions settle for a little bit, and hope for the best. Hope that people in Serbia are okay, that there won't be a second wave. Keep watching and learn in a civilized manner, in a reasonable manner about those mistakes, making sure that we don't make them again, and making sure that we just don't grow violent about people. I feel like that's the worst. Like when you just kind of like start saying insults to people online for just whatever reason that you might have towards them. Like I feel like the world would be a better place if we were just nicer to each other, but not nice in a fake way, but in just like in a real way, and actually willing to reconcile and willing to work it out and willing to, like, I mean, literally just love each other. Like, even if it just kind of like loving means just kind of like stay away for a little bit and just kind of like turn away for a moment and just like not entering a certain discussion at a certain time. So yeah, I don't want to get too preachy right here. I'm really just going away from the Novak Djokovic discussion. But yeah, those are my thoughts. He is still my favorite active player. As you all know, my favorite player of all time is going to be forever Gustavo Kirten. But Djokovic is one of the reasons why I watch tennis. He's the guy I cheer for every time that I see him play. And I will always be cheering for him, and I will be extremely happy if he surpasses Roger Federer's record. And I don't know, I will almost hold it almost as like my personal achievement. I don't know why we do that with sports. We hold people and teams as if they were us, and that's kind of like strange. But yeah, that's kind of like another conversation for another episode. So yeah, that was it for my opinion on Novak Djokovic and the whole fiasco of the Adria Tour. I don't think I will be talking about it anymore. I might make stories on Instagram and Facebook and posts and stuff like that, but I will make a full podcast episode, and I probably won't make videos again about this unless something actually really, really big comes up. But yeah, that was it. If you want to hear more about tennis news and stuff like that, you can also always follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I also be posting my just my opinions and just kind of like funny posts from now on. I'll try to be more active on those. Instagram at Tennis and Bagels and Facebook / Tennis and Bagels. If you're on Twitter, you can follow my personal account at and Rolenberg, like Tennis and Bagels, so and Rolenberg, ROLEMBERG. And yeah, have a great weekend, y'all. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.